We're going over to a foreign ministry press conference now. It's day 2 of the Prime Minister's visit to Nepal.
Yesterday, Prime Minister already delivered his press remarks, and there are a lot of things which are available on our website. But to brief you on the visit, as well as the discussions that have taken place since the arrival of Prime Minister yesterday, I have with me the Foreign Secretary of India, Shri Vijay Gokhale, and Joint Secretary North, who will be talking to you and brief you on the visit. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The visit of the Prime Minister to Nepal is winding down. A very successful visit, and as all of you saw at the joint press conference yesterday evening, at which a number of important statements were made, that there is a great deal of personal warmth and friendship between the Prime Minister and his Nepali counterpart. This morning, as you know, Prime Minister went to Muktinath and then to Pashupatinath and has just met several other political leaders, including former Prime Ministers Deuba and Prachand, as well as leaders of Madhesi parties. This is part of the ongoing engagement that India and India's leadership has with political leaders in Nepal. And I think it's worth pointing out here that at the function in Janakpur yesterday, the presence of all political representatives of Nepal on the stage with the Prime Minister indicates the good relationship that India's leadership and India itself enjoys with the Nepali political leadership, and that India enjoys support along the entire spectrum of the Nepali leadership. I think this is an important point. Prime Minister has more than once, both in his individual meetings with Prime Minister Oli and in the delegation talks, expressed his appreciation for Prime Minister Oli's personal attention to detail, both on his program in Nepal and on the substantive content of the discussions that have taken place. As you know, they met 5 times yesterday, twice on one-to-one meetings and 3 times on delegation talks, including at the dinner that Prime Minister Oli hosted for our PM, at which a number of former Prime Ministers were also there. Since yesterday's press conference by the 2 Prime Ministers have already shared a number of details about what the outcome of those discussions were, I won't go into that in any detail, but I do want to highlight a few points. Firstly, virtually all senior members of Prime Minister Oli's cabinet were in one way or the other involved in this visit. The Defence Minister was in Janakpur, and at the bilateral meeting yesterday you had the Foreign Minister, the Finance Minister and the Home Minister. And I think this is important because it is a message that goes across the entire government of Nepal. Prime Minister Oli in particular noted that there was sincerity and commitment on part of the Indian side to strengthen this multifaceted partnership, and I think that is an important point that I wanted to underscore. But more importantly, Nepal wants. So I think it is from our perspective important that Nepal looks at us as an economic partner and wants to partner with us in our growth. There was a very detailed review by both Prime Ministers, and that was evident from the press briefing as well, on the specific projects and initiatives that we have undertaken between the 2 countries. Both Prime Ministers also gave clear direction that we must stay focused on expeditious delivery. On the game-changing initiatives that Prime Minister had announced in Delhi in April, namely the Raxaul-Kathmandu rail link, the inland waterways and the agriculture partnership, the Prime Minister in his discussion with Prime Minister Oli conveyed specific forward movement in all these areas within 1 month of Prime Minister Oli's visit to India. And this in particular was highly appreciated by Prime Minister Oli. Both Prime Ministers also agreed that given the nature of our relationship, formalities should be dispensed with. High-level engagements should be, and I quote his words, sahaj or saral. In other words, that the more frequent these high-level exchanges can be, the more shorn of formality they are, the more productive they become. And President Bhandari also told Prime Minister that frequent high-level visits strengthens people-to-people relations. So there was a clear indication from the side of the government of Nepal that they value this political relationship. They value Prime Minister taking the trouble to come to Nepal within a month of Prime Minister Oli's visit, and they would like to see more of these sort of exchanges, and not necessarily as state visits. They could also be informal visits. Prime Minister Oli also reiterated, and this is an important point, something that we appreciated, that Nepal will be sensitive to our concerns, and that Nepal's territory will not be allowed to be used by anybody against India. And PM reciprocated that sentiment. We also conveyed that we valued our relationship with Nepal and that we would not allow anything to happen which would pose difficulties to Nepal. So I think this was an important iteration from the Nepali Prime Minister. And Prime Minister Oli also confirmed that Nepal will host the BIMSTEC summit this year, and also expressed Nepal's commitment to the BBIN initiative. This is Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal initiative. Overall, I think the highlight was when Prime Minister Oli said, and I quote, "Friendly relations between India and Nepal will be developed to new heights." And for us that was, I think, an important statement, one that symbolized, one that suggested that the government of Nepal is forward-looking and is interested in taking the relationship into new directions and on capitalizing on many of the initiatives we had announced in April. Prime Minister had a good, short meetings, but good meetings with the other stakeholders, former Prime Ministers Deuba and Pushpakumar Dahal Prachand, as well as with leaders of the two Madhesi parties. With all of them, the Prime Minister underscored what he had said yesterday at his press conference, and that is the achievement of Nepal in consolidating democracy and in holding elections peacefully in so short a span of time would in fact go down in history as one of the examples of how democracy should be implemented in any country. And he mentioned therefore to all of them that they were all the owners of this process, all of them, whether they are in opposition or they are in government. They own the process. They are the people who led the process, who established democracy, and the task, I think he said, Prime Minister, if I recall, said is they need to now strengthen that process, and that India would be supportive in the strengthening of that process, and we would welcome working with Nepal in whatever ways we could to strengthen that process. To sum it up, therefore, and I'm not going into the details because a lot of them were mentioned yesterday by the two Prime Ministers, I would say that 2 visits in 2 months of 2 state leaders sets our bilateral relationship on a very positive and forward-looking path. I would also say that we have, through these 2 visits, strengthened our connections at multiple levels. I think the issue of a relationship between 2 democracies was very evident during this visit and in Prime Minister's comments to the press. Prime Minister's visit to various cultural sites suggested that there would be a stronger people-to-people relationship, and if I recall, some of the leaders who called on the Prime Minister today in fact expressed their belief that Prime Minister's visits to Muktinath and Janakpur would actually lead to enhanced tourism and pilgrimages from India, which would be good for Nepal's economy. And the third connect, of course, is development, where what we agreed to do essentially was following the detailed review we undertook in the last 2 meetings between our leaders, we agreed we would bridge the commitment implementation gap, which was there in some cases on both sides. And what we have decided, or what the Prime Ministers have decided, is to have an informal timeline for the next comprehensive review, which will be September this year. And in the joint statement, which I presume will issue shortly, that will be mentioned. So, in fact, what the Prime Ministers desired was that we address the issues and we address it within a timeline, at least to ensure progress is made on all the issues that both sides raised. The intention the leadership on both sides made clear is they want to make this very historical, very cultural, very age-old relationship relevant to the times we live in, relevant for the 21st century. I want to end by saying that the Prime Minister is very touched by the reception he has got, not only the arrangements which Prime Minister Oli has made, but the manner in which similar sentiments were expressed by President Bhandari, Vice President Pun, Foreign Minister Gowli and other leaders, both whether they were in the government or the opposition. The Prime Minister has one remaining engagement, which is the civic reception, and I believe that we are entirely satisfied with this visit, and we now look forward to moving ahead on some of these projects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have time for a few questions.
Siddhant from WION, my first question, my only question is that the Prime Minister visits 3 temples, Muktinath, Janakpuri and Janakpur, and of course here in Kathmandu. Is it right to say that the focus was on faith diplomacy in this entire trip?